Hey there, welcome to our new podcast episode on pubsub pattern and backend communication. I am your host Ritik and I am thrilled to be here with you today. Now, if you are like most people, you might be wondering what the heck is pubsub pattern and why does it matter? Well, I am glad that you asked. In a nutshell, the pubsub pattern is a way for different components of an application to communicate with each other in a scalable and flexible way. It's a popular pattern in modern web development and it has a ton of benefit that we'll be exploring throughout this episode. But before we dive into the nitty gritty details, let's take a step back and talk about why backend communication is so important in the first place, right? You see, when you use an app or a website, there is a lot going on behind the scenes that you might not be aware of, right? As a developer, you might be aware of, right? Different components like databases, servers, and APIs all need to talk to each other in order to deliver the user experience that you expect, right? And there is where the pubsub pattern or publisher subscriber pattern comes in. It is a way for these components to communicate with each other in a way that's efficient, reliable, and flexible also. So if you are a developer or just someone interested in how modern web application work, then this episode is for you. We'll be exploring the ins and outs of pubsub pattern, discussing the real world examples and highlighting the best practices for implementation. All right, let's get started. Let's get back to the topic at hand. In this episode, we are going to be exploring the pubsub pattern, a powerful communication pattern that is used in the backend modern web application. First, we'll be discussing the basics of the pattern, including the different components involved, how they work together. Then we'll dive deeper into how the pattern works in practice, exploring some real world example of how it is used in web development. We will also be discussing the advantages of using the pubsub pattern, including its ability to reduce coupling between components, improve how it improves the fault tolerance, and how it enables asynchronous processing. But as with any pattern, there are also some challenges and consideration to keep in mind. Right, so we will be discussing those as well and provide some best practices for implementation. So if you are ready to dive into the world of backend communication and learn more about this powerful pattern, then let's get started. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is pubsub pattern? Well, as its core, the pubsub pattern is a messaging pattern. Remember this thing. It is a messaging pattern that enables communication between different components in an application. It is used in backend communication to enable more scalable and flexible architecture. So, how does it work? Right? Well, the pattern involves three main components. First, publisher, second, subscriber, and third is channels. Right? Publishers are responsible for sending messages to the subscriber. They generate the messages and publish them to the channels. Subscribers, on the other hand, are responsible for receiving those messages. They subscribe to the channels and receive the messages published by the publisher. And finally, channels are the medium through which the messages are sent. They act as a buffer between the publisher and the subscriber. ensuring that the messages are delivered reliably and efficiently. So let's take an example in to better understand how this pattern works in practice. Okay, imagine you have an e-commerce website that sells product to customers. When customer makes a purchase, you want to send a notification to the shipping department to prepare the order for shipment. Right? Now, instead of tightly coupling the purchase system and the shipping system, you can use the pubsub pattern to enable loose coupling and more scalable architecture. In this scenario, the purchase system would act as the publisher, generating a message that the purchase has been made, and it would then publish this message to a channel that the shipping system has subscribed to it. Okay, the shipping system, acting as a subscriber, would then receive the message and prepare the order for shipment. Okay, this is just one example of how the pubsub pattern can be used in backend communication to enable more flexible and scalable architecture. All right. Uh, that's okay. So let's explore some real world example of how it is used in practice. One common use case for the pubsub pattern is in the realm of notification. Okay, as we have already talked about. Now, so come to the next example or next use case for the pubsub pattern. uh, is in the context of real-time data processing. That's the best example I can give you. Imagine you have an application that needs to process large amount of data in real time. So in this scenario, the publishing component would be the data source and the processing system would be the subscribing component. The data source would publish data to a channel and the processing system would subscribe to that channel to receive data in real time for processing. Okay. So one of the example of the pubsub pattern in action is in the context of a distributed system. For example, imagine you have a large e-commerce platform that operate across multiple geographic regions. In this scenario, the publishing component would be the system that generates order. Yes, you are right. You guessed it right. Okay. So, and the order fulfillment system is different region would be the subscribing component. The order system would publish orders to a channel, and the order fulfillment system in different region would subscribe to that channel to receive orders for processing. These are just few example of how the pubsub pattern can be used in practice to enable more flexible and scalable backend communication. Now, let's talk about how it works, right? How exactly the mechanics of how it works. Okay, so the pubsub pattern is a messaging pattern I already told you that enable asynchronous communication between different components in a system. Publishers are responsible for sending messages while subscribers are responsible for receiving messages, right? The process of publishing the message involves sending a message to a specific channel. Channels act as the intermediaries between publisher and subscriber, allowing them to communicate without having to be aware of each other existence. Subscribing to a channel is a process that involves registering a component to receive messages from a specific channel. Once a component is subscribed to a channel, it will receive all messages that are sent to the channel. One of the key benefits of the pubsub pattern is that it enables decoupling of components. What does it mean, decoupling? It means that components can operate independently of each other and don't need to be aware of the details of how other components work. This decoupling improves the scalability because it allows different components to be scaled independently of each other. For example, suppose you have a system where a single publisher sends messages to many subscribers. You can scale the subscriber independent to handle its increased load without having to scale the publisher. Additionally, the pubsub pattern can be used to enable the fault tolerance in a system by having the multiple subscriber for a channel message can still be delivered even if one or more subscriber goes down, right? Overall, the publisher subscriber pattern is a powerful tool for enabling the flexible and scalable backend communication. Now let's discuss the benefits of using this pattern in backend communication. In the previous section we have dived deeper into the mechanics of how this pattern works. Okay, now discuss the benefits of using this pattern. One of the key benefit of the pubsub pattern is that it reduces the coupling between components. Okay, coupling coupling refers to the degree to which components rely on each other. By reducing coupling, you can improve the flexibility and modularity of your system. Another benefit of the publisher subscriber pattern is its ability to improve fault tolerance by having a multiple subscriber for a channel. Okay, if so messages can still be delivered even one or more subscribers are goes down. Additionally, the pubsub pattern enable asynchronous processing. This means that components can process messages independently of each other and don't need to wait for a response before continuing with their work, right? So this can improve the overall performance and responsiveness of your system. Now let's look at some real world example of how this pattern has been used to solve a specific problem. One example is in the financial industry where real time updates are critical. By using the PubSub pattern, financial institutions can provide real time updates to their customers without overloading their backend system. Right. Another example is in the field of healthcare, where patient data needs to be securely transmitted between different systems. By using the PubSub pattern, healthcare providers can ensure that the patient data is transmitted securely and reliably, even if some systems are temporarily offline. Right. Overall, the PubSub pattern is a powerful tool for enabling and scalable backend communication. So, in the previous section, we have discussed the benefit of using this pattern. Now, let's talk about some of the challenges that can arise when using this pattern. One of the key challenges is ensuring message reliability. Because messages are sent asynchronously, there is a risk that message may be lost or delivered out of order. This can be particularly problematic scenario where message ordering is critical, such as in financial transaction. Another challenge is managing message format because different subscribers may have different requirement for message format. It's important to establish clear standards for message formatting to avoid confusion and ensure the compatibility. Despite these challenges, there are some best practices that can help you to implement the PubSub pattern efficiently. One most important best practice is to establish a clear channels for different type of messages. This can help you to avoid message collision and ensure that the messages are delivered to the right subscriber. Okay. Another best practice is to carefully consider message reliability and ordering. Depending on your use case, you may need to implement mechanism to ensure that your messages are reliably delivered in the correct order. Okay. Additionally, it's important to think carefully about the scalability of your system. As your system grows, you may need to add more subscriber or channels to handle increased message volume. Right? It is important to plan for this growth from the outset to avoid scalability issue down the line. So that's it for the section. And then in the next and final section, we will be summarizing the key takeaways from our discussion, the PubSub pattern, and sharing some resources for further learning. Uh, Throughout this episode, we have explored the fundamental of this powerful pattern and in a real world application, and how it benefit ho- and how it basically benefit to modern software development. So let's quickly summarize the key takeaways from our discussion. First, PubSub pattern is a flexible pattern and a scalable pattern that allows component of a system to communicate asynchronously without being tightly coupled. Always remember, this makes it an ideal pattern for complex systems that require flexibility and scalability. Second, PubSub pattern involves publishers, subscriber, and channels. Publishers sends message to the channel, subscriber receive messages from the channel. This creates a decoupled architecture where components don't need to know about each other. Third, the publisher subscriber pattern provides many benefits such as improved scalability, fault tolerance, asynchronous processing, and it allows you to build more flexible system that can be adapted to changing requirements. Finally, there are some challenges that come with the using the PubSub pattern. These include message reliability, message ordering, and message format. But by following best practices, you can avoid common pitfalls and build more reliable and efficient system. So if you are considering using the publisher subscriber pattern in your own backend communication architecture, we encourage you to give it a try. It can help you to build more flexible and scalable, reliable system that can adapt to you for changing business needs. All right, that's it for this podcast on PubSub pattern. We hope you find this episode informative and valuable. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.